Hi, my name is Nadia and I'm the welding manager as well as a sewing instructor here at the Craft Center. Today we're going to be making a face mask based on the design that the Craft Center has developed and put onto their Facebook page. Today we're going to be using a cotton fabric, and you also might want to have a ruler as well as scissors or even a rotary cutter. You could also use t-shirt fabric for this, just using cotton because that's what we have in our scrap pile here. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be cutting a piece that is 10 by 18 inches. I'll show you how to cut it with both the scissors and the rotary cutter. Now, what we have here is a cutting table, which is nice because it has the markings already on here. So you kind of just see how long it needs to be and cut it to that length. Quilting rulers are also nice because they have markings and they're also clear in case you need to see anything underneath. So I'm just going to see where the 10-inch mark is here on the cutting table. We see it's right here. I'm going to take my quilting ruler, line it up with the mark. And so, let's try using the rotary cutter here. The blade has a button here where it detracts in and out. And you're just going to start, press down as hard as you can, and kind of just use the ruler as a guide. And see, it might stick a little bit, and that's okay. But we've done our first cut. Now it's time to make this piece 18 inches. And so we're making it 18 inches because in the end, we actually fold it in half in order to make this double thick. So I'm going to the 18-inch mark here. And let's use the scissors this time. Same thing as with the rotary cutter. I'm just making a straight line. If you like, you can use tailor's chalk to help kind of have your marking.
Or just a straight pencil.
Or a straight pencil. So here we have our square and we're going to go over to the iron. We're going to iron it. Alright, so we're here at our ironing board. My iron is nice and hot. It's set to cotton. You're going to kind of adjust your setting based on the fabric that you're using. And we have an ironing board here, but you could also use, if you don't have an ironing board at home, you could use a towel or something like that as well. And so what we're going to be doing here is we're going to be folding these top edges over by about 3/8 to half an inch. You can kind of eyeball it. The exact precision of it doesn't really matter. And you can see here how the edge is a little bit uneven, and that's fine, because it's all going to be sewed up in the end. I'm kind of eyeballing it, or if you want, you could take a ruler. You can kind of see where it is on the ruler. And that's about half an inch. So then you're going to take your iron. You're just going to press it down. I like to give it a couple bursts of steam. Kind of makes the process go by faster. I'm going to flip it. I'm going to do the same exact thing on the other side. Eyeballing it, making sure it's about half an inch. If you're not comfortable with eyeballing, don't burn your fingers. And you're just pressing everything down, making sure that it's not going to move. And so once we've done the edges, you're actually going to fold it in half. You're going to fold it so the side that is folded down is going to be on the outside, and that'll make sense later when we're sewing everything up, because this is going to get turned inside out. You don't need to give it a lot of heat, just enough where you're forming a little bit of a crease in the middle. You see, we have a nice crease that we've created with our iron. So now it's time to pin on the straps. Alright, so before we pin on our straps, we actually cut them. So what we have been doing is we've been using jersey fabric, which is a knit fabric. It's the kind of fabric that your t-shirts are made out of. And we've also been using old t-shirts that we have been having lying around here for campus rec. So, like before, there's two ways that you can cut it. You can use scissors if you have them at home. You can use a rotary cutter. Same thing. We have been cutting our straps to be 18 inches by 1 inch wide. If you're fine with having a shorter strap, then that's fine. It's up to your own preference here. So same thing as before. We have the nice cutting mat here, which is going to make cutting very easy. Just going to take our rotary cutter. Whoop. Sometimes it pops out, so try not to press the button that's on the side there. We all make mistakes. It should cut. There might be some spots that are still connected. I like to just go back, kind of use my scissors. So your strap should look something like this, especially if you pull it out, because it lets it curl on the side and creates quite a nice strap for your mask. And so for this design, you're going to want 4 pieces. So cut 4 of your straps. So we have our straps cut, and so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be pinning them onto our fabric. And we're not going to be pinning them outside like this. You might be thinking, well, that's where the straps go. We're actually going to be pinning them onto the inside, because when we sew it up, we take it right side out, and then the straps are outside. So we're going to take our crease here, we're going to use it almost like a ruler. We're using pins here as well. We're just going to be lining it up with the edge of the fabric and also where our crease is. We're going to put a pin in there. So you're going all the way down through both of your layers of fabric and just back out again so that it's not going to move. You can see here that we also want to have the pin head out, so while we're sewing it up, we're able to just take it out nice and easily. You're going to do the same thing on the other corner. And then also near the top. If it's sticking out a little bit like this, that's fine. It's going to get sewed up. You want to make sure, though, that it's going to be in a position where when you sew your sides up, you're still going to be going through your straps. You can see here we're using different colors as well. Doesn't really matter. So once you've pinned in your straps, kind of put them in the middle. Make sure that they're not on the sides that you're going to be sewing up. And fold it in half, making sure to line up your edges on the top. So now it's time to go to the sewing machine and sew this up. So we're here. We have a Bernina sewing machine. These are from the 90s. These are the Craft Center sewing machines. And we're using the same color thread. You can do whatever you want. This is your mask. You can make whatever style choices you want. So we're going to be sewing up the edge here. We have these marks here on the plate of the sewing machine. And so you're going to want to sew between 3/8 to 5/8, so anywhere between the 3/8 mark and the 5/8 mark on your sewing machine faceplate. I'm going to do it to 3/8 just to show you what it looks like. So place it under, put your needle in, your foot down. And so once your needle's in, you can take your pin out so you don't sew through your pin. Sew forward a little bit, back stitch. This helps to secure the stitch so it's not going to fall out. And sew it up. So this is what it should look like when you've finished with that. So now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. Before you sew up, I should mention, try to make sure that none of your straps are where you want to sew, because otherwise you're going to be sewing your straps in weird places that you really don't want. Another thing you might notice is I'm not actually paying attention to the width of my stitches here. We have it just on a basting stitch, and that's fine. If you want, you can try to sew it up with a shorter stitch, try to make it stronger, but a basting stitch will do. Same thing. Take a needle out. If you have a machine like this, you can also use the hand wheel. Getting near the end, take your pin out and backstitch it. So now we have the sides sewn up. It's time to turn it right side out. And there's our straps. You can see this is nice because it attaches them on the inside, so you don't need to worry about anything chafing against your face. So you kind of just pull everything, make sure that it's still a square, or a rectangle I should say. So make sure that your tops here are lined up, and we're just going to sew it up. Now we were using 3/8 before as our seam allowance. You're going to want to go a little bit closer to the edge here. It's just for aesthetics, but also there's not like a big flap on the edge. So I'm going to line it up with, let's say, the edge of the foot. Same thing with a back stitch, and we're just sewing it up in a straight line. can go a little bit further onto the strap. It doesn't really make a difference. So now this is sewn up, and it's time to make our pleats on the ironing board. So we're back here with our ironing board and our iron, still at the same temperature, and we're going to iron in our pleats. So what I like to do is just to kind of flatten everything out before, so we have a nice flat canvas to work with. Doesn't really matter though. We're going to be making our pleats. So you're going to want to use your fingers here. What I do is I take my pointer finger and I put them underneath, use my middle finger, and I'm just kind of folding it over with my fingers. And so you can just eyeball it here. Our goal in the end is to put 2 pleats and to make sure that the entire length of this portion of the mask is about 3.5 to 4 inches. We have our ruler here. We're going to use that to measure. So I'm putting the first one in, kind of eyeballing it. If it doesn't work out exactly the way you want, just iron it all out. I have been doing this a lot, so I kind of have a good idea about where 4.5 inches would be. I'm doing the same thing to the other one. Kind of just making sure that everything is parallel to each other. It's just for aesthetic purposes. Oh, jumping the gun here. Before I iron everything, I want to make sure it's in my length range, and it's exactly there. This one is at about 3 5/8, and that's okay. That's what we want. So pressing everything down. Giving it an iron. And now it's not going to come apart. One thing I forgot to mention is when you're making your folds, you don't really want them to be overlapping. That's a lot of layers for your sewing machine to go through. So when it looks like this, that's a sign that you've gone a little bit too far. If anything, you would want one pleat to end and the next pleat to begin, and that's the sign of a good pleat. We're back here at our sewing machine. It's time to sew our pleats down. So when you're doing this, you're going to want to keep your hands on your piece a little bit more because your pleats can become undone, and we want them to be flat when we sew them. One thing that might make it easier though is putting a couple of pins in so that they don't come apart. So I'm going to put a pin in there. I'm going to put another one up here. So now we're ready to sew. When I'm sewing this, I like to line the edge of the mask up with the edge of my foot here. You can even do it a little bit closer to the edge if you would like. But we're going to line it up with the foot. Same thing as before, back stitching, taking out our needles as we go. So now we've sewn this down, and the pleats aren't going to come undone. We're going to do the same exact thing on the other side. One thing that you might need to keep track of here is where your straps are, because it is very easy for them to be folded under and for you to sew through them. And we do not want that in this case. I've pinned these in, but you really don't need to, because the pleats are facing this way. If you ever make a mistake, that's okay. Just kind of undo your stitches and redo the stitch. Sewing is very forgiving. So this is basically a completed mask. And so what I like to do in the end is we'll take our little thread nippers here. We'll kind of just cut the threads that we've left long from the other processes. You can do this as you go along. We've been mass producing these here at the Craft Center, so we haven't been cutting them until the end. I'm going to leave these on for now, but that's basically the mask tutorial.